I'm here with the Baseball Pedalfish Pro 3.2, and I was going to talk about how I've mounted my transducer for my fish finder. So I've upgraded to a fish finder that's got Sidescan. Now the common theory with Sidescan is that the transducer, which I've got here, has to sit below the hull of the boat. So, which is fine, but that presents a bit of a problem because it hangs low and hangs proud, and it'll get damaged if I land on concrete or it sits on the ground. So I'm just going to show you quickly what I've done. Mounted on the roof of my car at the moment, so it makes it a bit difficult for me. If you watch that, you can see it retracts up into the hull. And now it sits up into that nice little transducer recess there. So if I want to, that's for transport. When I want to use it, I just release it up here. And there you go, it's back down ready for use again. So now I'm going to show you how I've actually gone and done that. So this is a shot from underneath, looking directly up. It may be a little bit difficult to see, but this is where I've connected the transducer to the inner tube, just with a couple of aluminium brackets, which I just handmade. It's pretty simple. And you can see there the outer tube coming through the scupper hole. So this is a bit of a rough and ready example that I'm going to make just for the purpose of this video. So it basically consists of 25mm irrigation pipe, which is a convenient fit for the scupper hole, and just some electrical conduit which I had, which is going to serve as the inner tube. So the principle is that this tube needs to slide up and down inside this outer tube. But the problem being that there's a bolt here which needs to retain the string. So what we'll do, we'll cut a slot between these two black marks on either side, and that means this inner tube will be able to slide up and down to the end points of this slot. This is effectively how it'll end up, with the spring retained on the bolt by that nut. But we have to take all that apart because we need to work out how to get the inner tube in there. Now we have a couple of slots cut in the inner tube, and you can see that will actually slide up and down, and that'll be the range of movement will be defined by that bolt. So what we need to do now, we need to attach the spring to the inner tube, and the spring obviously will sit on the inside in here. So we're going to need to drill a hole in the inner tube, and that's where the end of the spring is. But you can see, in principle, at rest, the spring will be in its resting position. And when we push up against when we push the tube up, it'll extend the spring, and that's where you need to retain it once it's at that. But that'll be in its stowed position when it's in the kayak. Once we release it, it'll come back to rest, and it'll pull the tube back down into the operational position. What we need to do now is work out how to retain the spring on the inside of this inner tube. So it's just going to be this bolt. I'm going to drill a hole here. And I'm using a bolt that's just not quite the width of the inner tube. And then I'll make an access port on the other side of this tube, and an access port on the outside of the outer tube. Okay, so I've skipped a couple of steps here, but you can see I've created an access port here and an access port in the outer tube. And what I've done is this spring, there's a screw here, the bolt I showed you before, sorry. I've retained it on the inside with a nut. I'll put the spring on, and there's a washer in there and retained by another nut. So now the only tricky part of the whole thing is getting the inner tube into the outer tube, and hopefully it'll work something like this. What I've got to do with this bolt is snag the end of the spring, which is sitting round about here. Okay, so I've got it. Now I just need to get it through this bolt hole here. Which is easier said than done. And there we go. I was to put a nut over that, but you can see the principle now. So the inner tube at rest will sit down here. When you push against the spring, it'll retract. You let the spring go, and it'll pull back to rest. And that's the principle of the whole thing. Okay, so now we need to consider how to mount this in the kayak. I've got a transducer scupper hole just here. Conveniently, 25mm irrigation pipe cap is just a perfect fit. So I'm going to just test this mount through this particular scupper hole. Now what I've done here on my cap is that I've retained the cap with a couple of aluminium brackets that I've made here and here. And then there's another 2 screws, one here and one here, which retain the outer tube into the cap. So I'll just show you how this fits from below. I'll hand my camera to my assistant. So it'll just fit from below. If I find the scupper hole, which is about here, that'll just push up through there. Obviously none of this is cut to size, but you can see it'll just fit there like that. Now we need to run your transducer cables up from the bottom. Let's run up from the bottom tube out through a slot that I've cut in the cap there. And then you attach a piece of string to that bolt that we retained the spring on the inner tube, and that allows us to operate the system. So mine runs from the transducer, from the transducer mount, just up to here. I retain it on this bolt here. I've got a loop here, and so I just pull that and release it, and that operates the mechanism. There we have it. We've got a retractable transducer for your Sidescan fish finder. A cheap and easy solution, and I hope this video has been of some help to you.